Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. Fall's in the air, right? It's October now, so trapping season's right around the corner, and I've been busy kind of preparing. So one of the things that I did was, if you remember last couple years actually, my fire pit has been down the hill there, but right over here and right here, you see this round area here, I had a couple of evergreen trees that were here. I don't know, some kind of ornamental evergreen trees that were here before I moved here. And they were tall. They were probably like 25 feet tall, maybe a little bit taller. But they got some kind of disease and died this summer. So I had to cut them out and haul them off because I didn't want all the other trees to catch a disease. So I hauled them out here and burned them up. But what that allowed me to do was have a little bit more of a flatter spot right here where that tree was. So I moved my fire pit up here closer to the house, which makes it a little bit easier. Whether it's, just sitting around the fire in the evening now that it's getting cool, or sometimes like to cook meat in the fire pit, or doing what we're doing today, which is doing some trap prep. So today we're going to boil, dye, and wax some traps. I don't know how many we'll get to today, but hopefully all of them. And I know what you're saying. You're thinking, well, Dan, you can just paint your traps, you can speed dip them, you can do other things, and you're 100% accurate. And for those of you that do that and like that, I think that's spectacular. I'm still old school, and I've been basically boiling and dyeing and waxing traps since I was a kid. The only thing I do differently now is I use logwood dye and not black walnut husk, just because it's a pain in the ass and a lot more work for me. But other than that, everything else I do is the same. I boil a pot over a fire, I boil the traps, I dye the traps, I wax the traps in a completely different container that has all my wax in it. And but this is how I do it. So let's get started on boiling and dyeing and waxing some traps. So what I've done here is I've got my fire started, fire going. You can see it's going down there in my fire pit, and got my little mini drum up there that I've cut in half. That is normally what I'm boiling all my traps in, just because it's easy to work with. And the water's in there. It's not quite boiling yet, but as soon as it comes to boil, I'm going to put my logwood dye in there, and I'm going to put these traps in there, probably about 10 or so at a time, and let them soak for 20 minutes or so, boil in there, and really get all that rust, all dye soaked into that rust and everything. The traps themselves are pretty clean. I spray washed them at the end of the season, so I got all the mud and gunk and stuff on them, but they've just been sitting in bins in my shop, so they're kind of rusty, and now we're gonna put some dye on them. As soon as I'm done with the dye, I'll get them all out, I'll dry them all up, and then I'll switch containers, and I'll put my wax on there, start melting it down, and then we'll show you how I kind of do that. So let's take a break, and then we'll go on to the next deal as soon as we start dyeing some traps. Okay, so got myself a pile of traps in here, and as you can see, water's boiling away in there. Got about 10 traps in there right now. It's about all I can fit in that little bucket. And fire's just chugging along, and they're just boiling away, and I'll leave them in there for about 20 minutes or so. That's enough to really boil them up pretty good, get all that dye and stuff stuck on there. And then I'll pull them out. I'm gonna set them over here, let them dry off a little bit, and then I will stick the next 10 in, and I'll just keep doing that until I get everything dyed. And then we'll switch pots, and then I'll put the trap wax pot on here. We'll get rid of the fire a little bit, so it's not so it's a little bit hot for right now for probably the wax, because you want the wax to kind of melt slowly, because it is flammable. And then once you bring it up to a good temperature, so it doesn't get gloopy on the traps, but I find that works better if you just do it slowly. So I'll stoke my fire down a little bit and let it melt a little slower, and then let it work up to a good temperature. And I'll kind of show you how I can kind of eyeball it and figure out where that temperature is. And you can also tell just by sticking your trap in there, and by the way it sounds when it goes in there and everything else. So we're chugging along, boiling up some traps and dyeing them up, and we'll just keep messing around. At least it's a nice day for it. It's a beautiful day outside today. It's absolutely beautiful. Sun's out. Leaves are just, I don't know if you can tell, but the leaves are just barely starting to turn. A little bit of yellow and a little bit of red in a couple places, but over the next 2 weeks they'll really be popping, and we're gonna have some traps done by the end of the day. All right guys, we got the last few traps in there, about to call this one done. Here's what we've dyed and boiled so far, and put the last few in the pot. So we're gonna give these about another 10 minutes. These are like some drags that I have in here, so we're doing the drag ones here at the end, and get these babies boiled up, and then it'll be time to do some waxing. It's getting actually kind of later in the day. Took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to take, and I got really kind of a late start. So probably what I'm going to do, because it's getting dark so early now, I got a few other things I need to do. So probably just going to pull these traps out of this pot, put them all back in the side-by-side, park the side-by-side in the shop, and then in the morning I'll come out and restart the fire and put the wax pot on here, and I'll wax them all tomorrow. So I'll shoot video of that too, but this is probably the end of today of what we're gonna get done. And we didn't get started until like 2 o'clock. So it's, you know, we got a really super late start. So we'll finish waxing tomorrow, and then we'll have all of our traps. We'll have about 60 MB550s done, and we'll be ready to go. And as you can see, the sun is starting to slip down. Some clouds are rolling in, but we'll get these punched out, and then we'll wax tomorrow, and we'll show you how we do that. All right, guys, I'm not sure how this is going to come out. It's so windy today, but if I don't get some of this done today, I'm not going to have an opportunity. I've got to go out of town the next couple weeks and work, and got some other stuff going on, and then I just won't be able to get it done before the season opens on November 15th. And while I probably will not trap that first week, just in case I decide to, I want to be ready. So here's what I've done so far. These are all MB550s, and how I do this waxing thing is, again, I'm old school. So I put my pot up in my fire pit, get a fire going underneath it, get the wax melted down really good. And then I was putting I could fit about 5 MB550s in here at a time. So I'm basically just taking them, holding them by the earth anchors, hanging the earth anchors along the edge, along the lip there, and putting everything else down inside the wax. Once they're down in there, what you want to do is you want to basically listen, and you'll hear it kind of bubbling, gurgling, kind of making these like itty bitty little popping sounds. And all that is the trap that is getting to the same temperature as the wax. And once that little popping sound kind of goes away, then the trap is the same temperature as the wax, and then you can lift them out. Honestly, that just takes like maybe 30 seconds, somewhere in that range. So while I'm getting the next batch ready, I'm just letting those sit in there. About the time I get the next 4 or 5 ready to go, I'm pulling those out. I'm sticking them over here, letting them dry, and then I'm putting the next batch in, and I just keep going, doing that, and it's super quick. Once I got the fire up and going, I had all these done in, I don't know, an hour and a half. I mean, it's fast once you get rocking and rolling. This is basically the last one I'm going to do. It's a drag. As you can see, I got a bunch of the chain and everything else in there. I mean, you're already putting the trap in there. I don't see what the big deal is to just put everything else in there too. Protects the chain, you know, keeps it, it's already, I've already put it in the dye, so the chain is black. Just protects it a little bit better. It doesn't cost you, what does it cost you? $1 to do all that. So that's kind of how I do it. Again, I know there's lots of other ways to do this stuff. A lot of people don't want to do, they don't want to wax and dye their traps. I just like it. I'm old school, and I just like the way the traps work that way. And I actually just like the process of of doing it the old-fashioned way. Plus, you know, I'm outside, the leaves are changing, it's beautiful out today. Why would I not want to dye and wax traps? Other than it's windy. So, all right guys, hope that helps. Season's around the corner, getting pumped.